There's definitely an art scene in Staten Island. Don't be fooled by mainstream media. Staten Island has little pockets of art, creative people, new businesses. Say your name and title, and I'll do mine.
All right. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bennett, the Executive Director at Staten Island Arts.
And I'm Jenna Momozo, Deputy Director.
And today we're going to be taking you on a tour of some of our favorite locations and businesses on the North Shore of Staten Island,
highlighting the connection between art, commerce, and culture. Here we are at Everything Goes Book Cafe, where literally everything goes. You can find music, you can find art, you can find food, you can find it all here at Everything Goes. This place is the closest to New Orleans in New York. They've made their own library here, people donate books, and they're educating the community around them, which is very important. And now I'm in my living room here at ETG.
I think I'm gonna buy this one. I think I found a winner. Jane Pitney.
It says, kids, you need an adult if you want to see how this works.
So welcome to Staten Island Makerspace. This is a place that's at the intersection of old traditions and new artistic practices, and it's a place where everybody can find everyone else in the Staten Island art community. Emily, can you tell us a little bit about the Makerspace members who are operating their own small businesses out of Makerspace?
Michael Ardito, he runs a company called Hometown Type, and he restores and resells typewriters. So it's kind of magical in a way.
I've noticed that his space has grown.
Yes.
And I hope that that's because his business is growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So he is actually one of the last typewriter repair shops in New York.
Wow.
He's right here in Makerspace.
Here we are at Flagship Brewery, the renaissance of brew culture on Staten Island.
The way this place looks now has a lot to do with how the community wanted it to be. A lot of the stuff you see like this flag those are by people that just hang out here. They just did that one day, you know?
There's an art scene here. He just said it, we're here, we're all here.
And I think that's what makes a community or a neighborhood attractive to just be around or live or open a business. That's what might get people to this neighborhood for the first time. That's what people that frequent this neighborhood, I think, love about it, and we just want to be somewhere in there.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, Julia.
Hello. Hi.
Oh my God, Julia looks amazing.
Thank you. It goes all the way to the back, so if you, so.
You did such a beautiful job setting this up. Am I smelling jasmine?
Yeah, jasmine.
Okay.
That was a great guess. Everyone just wonders like, oh, what's that smell when we come in? And I'm like, jasmine. But you're the first person to figure it out what it was.
So when people drive down Bay Street and they come into the Bay Street corridor, if they're coming from the Verrazano Bridge, one of the first things that they see as they enter the Bay Street corridor is the mural of elephants, the beautiful golden doors that are the doors of your family's restaurant, La Caruana.
You know, a lot of people doesn't really come down to Bay Street as often, but once we did the murals and the golden door, people started to notice like, oh, I should go in there.
Well, and once people pass by it, they will never forget it.
And they'll never forget, they try to come back.
The family that owns La Caruana was looking for a way to share its cultural heritage with the rest of the world. And so the young daughter of the restaurant owner founded the museum, which you can now visit.
So here we are at Hypnotronic Comics, steps away from the Staten Island Ferry Terminal. And a large part of their business is supporting local makers and creators that work here on Staten Island.
This place is a mecca for anybody creative in the area. We're promoting them, and then they tell everybody our stuff is available at Hypnotronic Comics.
Right.
So it's a cross-promotion deal. It's great.
Right. That's a local artist up there on your wall.
Yes, Santo. He's our local artist. We've sold a few of his pieces before.
This is from an artist, Melissa Prieb. She makes jewelry with comic books, and these are some of the things that she brings in. She also makes frames, and we sold out of those because they're awesome, so I got to get some more of those in.
I think what we've done is we've just basically have this great support system that crosses not only through art and culture, but through commerce as well.
And we do that by supporting our local independently owned businesses, which are often owned by artists.
He's got free posters for us.
Graduated from Hypnotronic Comics.
Thanks.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you everyone who is joining us for this great live conversation with the film Fed Up. Hopefully all of you had the chance to watch the film. If not, then you'll definitely want to watch it after this, but it's definitely going to help sort of inform the conversation, the background of the conversation. So let me first start. My name is Kevin, and I am the Cinema Connects coordinator for Staten Island Arts. And I just want to start off by thanking a few people who are able to really the ones who made tonight possible. First is the Neighborhood 360 program by the New York Department of Small Businesses. It's a really great program that is really helping fund this entire Cinema Connects dinner downtown dinner and a movie series. It was a lot easier to do when we could all get together and have dinner in downtown Staten Island and watch a movie together. But thank you everyone for joining us as we transition into this sort of digital world. On that note, please make sure that we are doing our best to support local businesses during this. A lot of restaurants, a lot of grocery stores, a lot of markets are really hurting right now. So please do whatever we can to sort of shop, as I like to say, stay in and stay local. A few of our restaurant partners are actually still open during this. We have Chiang Noi Thai, Sepe Pizza Bar, Edgar's, that actually has some surprisingly pretty healthy options over there at Edgar's. So be sure to check them out. Craft House and Honor Wine. So thank you guys so much for continuing to support this program. And when you get the chance, get out and support these guys. So thank you very much. And would also like to extend a great big thank you to our community partner for this screening, SIPCW. We'll get into what they do more here in a second. But thank you very much, Omalara and your whole team, for really helping bring this entire conversation together. We really appreciate that. So on that, Omalara, let's start with you.
Hi, Kevin.
If you could just sort of briefly introduce yourself. Hi.
Hey.
Briefly introduce yourself and sort of tell us what SIPCW is and what's going on over there.
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. And Kevin, thank you for that introduction and the opportunity to have this panel with Staten Island Arts and Cinema Connects. And thank you for all of you who are tuning into today's stream. Good evening. I am Omalara. I'm the Child Wellness Initiative Manager with the Staten Island Partnership for Community Wellness. SIPCW, the acronym, is a public health nonprofit dedicated to addressing the emerging public health needs of Staten Island residents. And now that we're in a COVID-19 pandemic, we are also surfacing a lot of issues that are affecting children and families as well. So we've been more responsive with those needs as well with our partners. So it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be here to talk about the organization, and then also as it relates to some of the issues that surfaced that were highlighted in the setup film. So, and shout out to Susanna Abadi from Snug Harbor and Dr. Usha Thomas, who you'll hear from, for being amazing, dedicated partners as we're trying to dismantle this obesity pandemic together. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, Susanna, let's go over to you. Thank you for joining us. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys are doing over in Snug Harbor.
Hi, everybody. So I'm the Director of Education and Engagement at Snug Harbor. And in relation to this movie, I think the most important thing to remember is that we have a 2.5-acre farm that's a production farm. And this year, some people I hope know that we have our first CSA, which is bringing local veggies to everyone in the borough. And it's a sustainable farm. So we're very mindful and intentional about how we raise produce, which translates into very high nutrition content as well as environmental stewardship. So that's one thing. And then of course we're a public park, and you can come and you can get active at Snug Harbor. Please be mindful about best practices in COVID-19 right now, please. That means a mask, that means gloves, but we really would love to see you there.
And I actually were talking about this before, but I actually bought into a share of that. So I'm very excited to start getting my fresh veggies. So
thank you.
Grown right up the street from where I live. It can't get more local than that. Well, it can in my backyard, but I can't grow things. So Dr. Thomas, same to you. If you could talk a little bit about yourself, your practice, what you do, and maybe a little about the nutrition and lifestyle program that you had sort of that you brought to your practice.
Sure. Thank you. Hi, everybody. And thank you so much for having me as part of this panel. Omalara, especially, we've been talking about this, obesity issue for a long time on Staten Island. And I'm so happy and glad to be part of the Child Wellness Initiative
that is a coalition that we have started in order to address all the chronic illnesses in Staten Island. And in children, we're dealing with asthma and obesity. But talking about myself, I'm a pediatrician. I've been on Staten Island. I have an office in Staten Island. I've been practicing there for the past 15 years. I'm also board certified in a specialty of obesity medicine because that's something I'm passionate about. And last year, I started a program in my office, which is a nutritional program with lifestyle modification and intervention, behavior modification program, where we enroll families and children who are interested in losing weight and just basically having a healthy lifestyle. And it's a 12-week program where I have a dietitian and I have a social worker as part of the program. And together we meet with these families once a week and we help them. And it's had quite a lot of success, but it is a very challenging problem. And it's exciting to be part of a borough-wide outreach that helps because, as you know, doctors by ourselves, we cannot treat this problem on our own. We need help from the community. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's also really fresh. Absolutely, welcome everyone. And I wanted to kind of go off of that a little bit because it is very frustrating being someone who's sort of a layman in this world and trying to figure out what the right thing to do. And it seems like the common sense thing is everything in moderation, don't go overboard, and realize what it is that you're eating. But there are a lot of things that just sort of come at you from all these different directions, and sometimes it can become overwhelming and frustrating, and you just don't really know, like, do I go to the Atkins thing, or do I do this thing, or do I do all of that, and trying to maintain some sort of balance. And so it's great to hear that physicians like yourself are really trying to work with families and kind of bring together a more holistic approach to that, to nutrition and just being healthy overall.
Okay.
So on that note, Omalara, what really should people be thinking about when they're going to the grocery store and they're shopping for groceries? Ideally we want to be eating whole foods, right? But sometimes that just isn't possible. So what kind of things should we be looking at in terms of reading nutritional labels, or what it is that we should be thinking about when we're shopping?
Yes, absolutely. So I know it can get, like you mentioned earlier, Kevin, it can get very confusing for people. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there in terms of what's healthy, not healthy. And I think that a lot of people are also really short on time as well. So, if you're working more than one job, or you're trying to balance, working and parenting and other responsibilities, the time could be a factor for you. So this is going to be a rich conversation, I can already tell. But in terms of like when you're going to the grocery store, so rule of thumb, I learned when possible not to go to the grocery store on a hungry stomach, when you're really, really hungry, because you might overshop. But that's just something that I apply to myself. But we have the joy of convening a clinical work group that put together an obesity prevention toolkit and an obesity toolkit that's also responsive to expanding resources to different parents and kids of how to read nutrition labels. And Dr. Thomas was actually one of the pioneers of that toolkit. So within that toolkit, we have some information on how families can actually interpret a nutrition label. So you want to definitely be mindful of, the calories per serving. And I know that could be a really tricky thing, because when you're looking at the item, when you're looking at the nutrition label, especially if it's something that it may look like it's one serving, but it might be like 3 or 4, those calories add up. So I would say definitely look at the servings within each package. I think it's also important, as you mentioned, Kevin, looking for whole foods in general and leaning away from processed when possible. You want to look at the nutrients. You want to look at the ingredients, you want to look at the fat content. I know that, some people hear the word fat, and sometimes that can be very, scary for people. They might assume that it's completely bad. Well, not all fats are bad. And I think that if you're able to separate, saturated fat from trans fat, for example, the trans fat is something you definitely want to avoid. You want to look at the sugar content. You want to look at, natural sugar, and you might want to look at the added sugars. So things like fruits, those are your natural sugars, right? The things that might be a sugary beverage that might have added sugars in it. So you want to limit that amount of sugar when possible. I think the sodium content, and Dr. Thomas, feel free to jump into this as needed, but the sodium content is also key. I think when you're looking at health, it's not only sugar, it's not only fat, you also want to be mindful of sodium. And the American Heart Association recommends no more than 2,300 milligrams per day, and that's for adults. But I would say, below 2,300 if you can. Obviously, if you have specific health conditions, your doctor or your care provider will definitely give you the recommending that you need. And when you're looking at sugar in general, I would say, for sugary drinks, stay away from the flavored milk, for example. Try to keep the food in its whole form when possible. And then even when it comes to cereals and yogurts and smoothies, again, when you're getting those things, trying to make sure that it has whole ingredients. I think that's something that's really important. If you're looking at syrups and sweets, that's another thing you want to be mindful of. Make sure that you're getting it. Look at the ingredient. Make sure that it's in its whole form when you're looking at the ingredients. Anything extra, you should be skeptical of, or maybe do some research on, especially if it's an ingredient you don't know anything about. So, as a takeaway, I would say always look at the nutrition facts and the ingredients. Look at you want to limit your sugary drinks and foods. You want to replace like candy and desserts with natural sweet fruit when possible. And then when you're taking an inventory of your house, just being mindful of what you're actually bringing in the household as well, that might have added sugar in it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it can be very confusing sometimes, because something that looks like it's really healthy and has the packaging that makes you think is really healthy, when you flip it over and you actually read those ingredients and you read the nutritional information, it turns out it's anything but, right?
Absolutely. And some of the ingredients have names that people just have never seen before, and I think that in itself can be really confusing for people. There's things that are mislabeled as being healthy or nutritious, but they just have questionable ingredients. I always say, if it's questionable to you, do some research on it. Maybe take a picture of it and do some research to see what you could find on it, or maybe bring it to the attention of a registered dietitian if that's possible.
Yeah, find out what's happening with it. And Dr. Thomas, in your practice, what are some of the successful specific interventions you've used in successes with parents and children, or just people in general?
Sure. So, in my nutritional program, I've noticed that what you have to find out what works for individual families. It's not that one size fits all. And so the way we have the program, and what I found with my experience, is empowering families to make decisions on their own and to say, okay, this will work for me, but this will not work for me. So we don't really say do X, Y, and Z and don't do something else, because sometimes that may not work for some families. But that being said, we do give them suggestions, and I have found a few things that really work. One of them is maintaining a food log. I have noticed families and parents and adolescents who maintain a food log do very, very much better than people who don't, because we have a saying in the office that we say, what you bite, you write. So, it's pretty important, because what happens is, you might not even realize, many times we eat without even realizing that we're eating something, or, we are, there's something that needs to be noted down. Because, when you write it down and the next day you go back and look at it, you're like, why did I have a snack at 2 o'clock yesterday? I just had lunch at 1. What was the reason that I had the snack? And so you kind of become a little bit more aware of what you're putting in your mouth. And so the next day, when the next day rolls around and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to be mindful of that fact that, I ate something at 2 and maybe that's not something I should have done. So food logs, many of my patients have said that food logs really help them. And so it kind of also gives us an idea of what they've eaten the whole day. And it helps us to calculate their calorie count and see where we can make changes, what can be removed, what can be added, what is nutritious, what is not nutritious. And that I have found, and patients have found to be very helpful. The other thing is just to expand on what Omalara said, reading food labels. It's amazing to me that people generally don't flip the carton over to look at what's on the nutrition labels at the back. Just like in the documentary Fed Up, all the food items are advertised so well. They say it's healthy, it's low fat, it's lean food, good for you. It's all advertised. So that's all the parent sees. They walk down the aisle. They don't have much time. They look at that. They say, "Oh, this is lean, whatever," and they pick it up. They don't flip it over and look at the label. And when they start doing that, and that's part of the program that we have, we try to teach them what is good, that what they should be looking at, how much of protein there should be there. Like Omalara said, what is a good fat, what is bad fat? Look at the sugars. If they see added sugars, maybe that's not a product that they should be really picking up. For example, cereals are advertised as being healthy breakfast items, right? But you turn it around and you look, it has 32 and 35 grams of sugar. And that's really like eating, just like they said in the documentary, just eating a bowl of sugar. So that is something that I find parents are really not very well aware of. And the third thing that I have noticed is, trying to tell parents not to buy things that they are not really healthy. So if the child doesn't go shopping, it is in pediatrics, the child doesn't go shopping, the child doesn't go grocery shopping. So if there is healthier snacks available in the house, and if the child is hungry, those are better options than having the child having chips or donuts or cakes or whatever it is that there is there, that the child has a temptation, because it's a very, very challenging problem. And a child who's obese or a child who's overweight is constantly hungry, and that's not their fault. That's just the way their metabolism is. And it's the way the whole system works in their body. So they're constantly hungry. And if there's food like that around, they're going to want to eat that more than having to eat maybe fruits or something else that's more healthy. So those are a few things that I have found pretty helpful, and parents and patients have also found that to be pretty helpful for them.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up,
when I sit down and
Tanya.
eat the bowl of Fruity Pebbles. Yeah, absolutely. So I was just joking that when I sit down and eat my bowl of Fruity Pebbles, the chances are I'm going to want another Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah, exactly.
Faster than I should want another bowl of Fruity Pebbles. Yeah. Now, Susanna, I want to ask you, what are really affordable ways that families can kind of begin to approach healthier eating? Is it oftentimes, there's this equation of healthy eating equals expensive. What are some do to sort of help make that accessible to them?
So I want to first, of course, say that the healthiest way and the easiest route would be to join our CSA this year. And this is the freshest food you can access, other than, of course, as you were saying, in your own yard, out of your own containers. So it's going to be higher in phytonutrients, it's going to have great fiber, and it's going to bolster your immune system. And it's going to be right there, very close by. We are offering a sliding scale. We're accepting SNAP and WIC, and we're accepting payment plans. So we're working very hard to make it as accessible as we can. This is our first year, and in terms of having the kinds of produce that families are going to want and be familiar with, we're very interested in learning that. We may not be able to make it happen this year, but we want to know what our community is interested in having close by and grown, because we are going to be doing this again next year. And this is like our dream come true, to be able to be offering food that's going to be going right into our neighbors' dinner tables. So make sure you let us know, because we want to have the freshest produce that will fit into anybody's favorite cuisine. So that's one way. The other way I would suggest is that, for instance, we're having a plant sale right now where we have a ton of fresh produce. You can go to our site and go to our plant sale, and you can order in a COVID-19 friendly way, a COVID-19 safe way, I should say. You can order plants that then you can grow on your windowsill, you can grow it in your backyard, you can grow it on your fire escape, and you can have vegetables, you can have herbs. And these are really important ways to get both more nutritious food, but also to find a way to enliven the food that you're eating without going to those strange chemicals that you don't know what they actually are. You can avoid all that added fat, salt, and sugar by using fresh herbs to make your food more exciting. So go and check out our plant sale and, grow your own. And then of course there's the community gardens, which I think are struggling to reopen right now, but it's always an important place for people to be able to have access to land to grow food. So those are three pieces of, I think, an urban eater's puzzle to help increase access to the freshest produce.
Susanna, I think you can also grow your own herbs in your own house, right?
Yes.
Without actually having an actual garden, because I don't have a fancy garden, but
yes. Yeah, we just put together a video actually for how, if you did go to the grocery store and you still have your celery or you have your carrots, there are ways to actually take those food scraps and start to regrow them, which of course is not going to take care of your meal that you want this week or this month, but it will start to bring it into your normal household daily activities to bring that produce closer into your own control and your own favorite rituals.
That's awesome. And for those of you who are tuning in, I just want to let you know that we're hoping to be able to get questions from you guys. So if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat window. It's off to one of the two sides here, and if we get the chance, we'll ask them at the end. So I guess, Omalara, we can't always eat at home, though a lot of us are eating at home more now than we have. Some of us are still eating out, and hopefully one day soon we'll get to go to restaurants again. Restaurants don't have ingredient lists, so what do you do when you go out?
Wow, good question. So I would say, when you're going out, I know you can't do this all the time, especially if you're going out in large groups and you're not the deciding factor of where everyone is going to go. But I would say that, try to aim for restaurants that have healthy alternatives or are open to preparing your food differently, so that you can omit certain ingredients that probably shouldn't be in your body. So I would say, when you're looking at the menu, look for things that are, without added sugar. Look for things that, have a lot more vegetable options. Ask how the vegetables are being prepared. And I know these are new conversations with the restaurant, but I think that in terms of, the shift that society is trying to make and living longer, of having a more fulfilling life, you need to be healthy to do that. So I think that, some restaurants are becoming more receptive to listening to their patrons in terms of what type of ingredients they're cooking with. So, sharing what kind of ingredients they're cooking with, especially for people who have specific diet restrictions or people who just have conditions where certain foods don't fit well with them. When it comes to whole grains, I would say, request for whole grains. If you're eating the breads, try to fill your plate with vegetables and fruits. when possible. And I think that, also sharing a dish is something that, is also recommended, especially when I know we're in a pandemic right now. So I'm saying this as if you were actually, going out, but sharing a dish is also something that I would also recommend. And then salads, getting creative with the salads, looking at the salad options as well. And also looking at the protein too. So asking about, the protein content and, increasing your protein when possible. When it comes to water, I would say that, a popular thing that I've done and a lot of people that I know have done is they've used lemon to flavor their water. They've used lime as opposed to having soda or a diet soda, which was highlighted in the setup film. And then in terms of sauces, so if you're looking at the entree and you see a lot of creamy sauces, see if you can actually reduce the quantity of the sauce, or maybe ask them to put the sauce on the side so you have control over what sauces, how much of the sauce you're actually putting in your system. So yeah, those are some things that I would recommend. I would also say that, going back to Dr. Thomas's point about doing the food log, I think that regardless if you are on the verge of being obese or overweight or not, I think it's important, especially when you're trying new foods, to have a way to document that somewhere, because you just never know what type of stomach discomfort or issue, you might have in the future. And I think that having a record of that is so valuable, so that if you do ever have an issue, you can actually go into, a care provider's office and have that conversation hey, this is what I ate on such and such a, day, especially if it's a new food from a new venue, so that they can help you pinpoint the issue. Yeah, so those are my recommendations.
I just wanted to add on to what Umalara said. In addition to eating out, I mean, now we are in a pandemic, so everybody's home and hopefully cooking home and not eating out as much. But, before the pandemic, parents and people were always on the go. So they were running from school, picking up kids for activities, so they always are hungry. As soon after school, what they would do was they would stop at some deli or a fast food place and pick up food, which is obviously not a good choice. So a little bit of planning is what we advise parents, because if you just a little bit of planning, maybe throw a couple of healthy snacks in the car, have it ready when you leave in the morning or when you go to pick up your child from school. So when the kid is hungry and once you're passing by McDonald's and they want French fries or whatever it is they want, you can always give them the other alternative snack that you have, which is a healthier choice. And so you're decreasing the amount of times that your child is eating unhealthy food on the run, on the go.
I think that's such an amazing idea.
Yeah, just a little planning. That planning piece is key. And I know that for some parents and people in general, it's hard to plan throughout the week. So maybe looking at the days that or just times in the day where you actually have to yourself to kind of look at your week and look at all the activities that you have to do with yourself, with the kids, so that's something that you can actually put in your schedule. Yeah.
And pick up from the store in advance. I think that's so valuable. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Thomas.
Planning in general is really important. Otherwise, you're throughout or walking up and down the aisles where you're going to be tempted by the things that may not be the best for you, instead of being able to be focused on going to the departments or where you actually need to go, right? I think I heard
I'm also going to stick in there that you want to stay to the perimeter of the grocery store where there's less processed food.
Yes.
If you think about the way that grocery stores are designed, it's actually pretty predictable. And by the time they get you to the cashier register, there's all those impulse buys that are there. Generally, a lot of the Whole Foods are around the outside, and then you'll find much more processed food because they pay for having their food place there. So it helps carry for the grocery stores some of the expense of stocking some of those items. So there's a high incentive to centralize where some of that food is. So I want to make sure that we emphasize that. I think you're so right to point out meal planning, having a list in hand, making sure you have a plan before you hit. But also think of, see what they're doing. They're trying to get you to buy things that make them money, not you healthy.
True.
Yeah,
Very true.
it's so true.
I think Kevin is breaking up in between. I can't hear Kevin.
And speaking of planning, I think another great thing that I've heard that's worked very well, and I've learned this through a registered dietitian, is also taking an inventory of what's in your house before you actually leave to go to the grocery store. So as I mentioned, I'm like, it's probably not a good idea to be super hungry before you go, because you'll probably buy everything. But, looking at what you have in the household versus what you need to purchase would be helpful. If you're trying a new recipe, again, that's also helpful. So, you don't have to make multiple store runs, because if you're like me, and I don't know if that's happened to you, Dr. Thomas or Susanna, like you've gone grocery shopping, and then you come home and then there's one item or two items you forgot. And you're like,
all the time, all the time.
Oh my gosh. So I would say definitely, do the inventory of your household to see what you need, especially for the new recipes. I think that, especially during this time when people are home, and Dr. Thomas mentioned this, we're hoping that a lot more people are using this as an opportunity to cook more and, get creative with new recipes, or just having that control over what you're actually putting in your body, because you're home, right? You get to see like what's actually going into your food, right? You have control over those ingredients. And so this is also an activity that your kids can participate in. If you have children, it's special, it's a bonding time. You're tapping into creativity within yourself. So I hope that's something that, people are looking into more. I know I'm cooking more. I'm definitely cooking more. I'm also trying to do more environmental control because I'm home. So if you've ever heard of the seafood diet, where you see food and you want to eat the food, my kitchen is pretty close to me. So when I'm like working from home, I know it could be very tempting to be like, to get up and have to like get something to eat, but yeah. So yeah, the environmental control that Dr. Thomas mentioned, where you just kind of like, look at what you have at home, and, especially for the kids, like make sure it's things that, you would want to have in your diet. Because if it's not in your, yeah.
I'm gonna show you literally what came home that's been sitting out. Do you see this bag of greens? These are like mustard greens. That's what we've been having out. And because of course it's stimulation, right? It's about getting that stimulation as well as like intermittent hunger. And especially we're housebound. So my kids have been eating mustard greens like nobody's business, radishes, everything. And it's just, again, it's like Dr. Thomas had said before, it's about the choices you provide, which, Artie Duncan, the former head of education for the US, had said this, that it's just, you have to make sure the choices that are provided to children are the ones that are going to be the best for them. It's about exercising that responsibility. And very often it's hard to do because what a kid wants, they're going to be very insistent about.
Our Wi-Fi is dead. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you, yeah.
So I'm going to go off of video because apparently our Wi-Fi is having issues. So thank you for carrying on without me. I appreciate that. Now you just have my either the voice of God or my profile picture up there. So
handsome.
Thank you.
I wanted to add on what Susanna and Omalara said. Right now, since I'm home, I'm doing a lot of smoothies, and I've found that that's pretty nutritious and takes a little bit of time, but once you do it, you get the hang of it. And I have parents who tell me that, oh, my child doesn't eat any vegetables. So this is what I tell them. I said, throw them all into a smoothie, throw in a banana, make it a little sweeter so they will eat it. And there are studies that have shown that a child, it takes about 10 to 12 times of trying a new food for a child. I don't know about an adult, but for a child to kind of get used to the taste. So just because a kid doesn't like it the first time, the second time, it doesn't mean you give up. You keep trying, and after about 8, 9, 10, 12 times, the child will start taking it. So the mistake most parents make is they just give up after a couple of times and they don't want to try it again, saying, oh, he doesn't like it. Oh, she won't eat it. But that doesn't,
That's such a good point. I'm happy you brought that up because I've heard many parents talk about that. So Susanna talked about like that environmental stimulation. You always have it there in front of them, so they see it, they recognize it. It's probably going to be important. It doesn't seem awkward because it's something that's part of the environment, it's part of the home. I think that the exposure matters, and not giving up because the first time your child their palate was exposed to it,
right,
it didn't register well, So 10 to 12 times, that's actually, I didn't even know that, Dr. Thomas. I did not know. But yeah, I hope that's something that everyone can take away, especially if you're also struggling with that.
Can I just piggyback off of that to remind us, though, as a parent, that 10 to 12 times means not applying pressure.
Yes.
Not making, it does mean that there might be some wasted food. It may mean that you're doing just a little bit of food at once, but you have to be very understanding and compassionate about the fact that a lot of their peers are eating junk food. This is the standard American diet now, is being primarily processed and full of artificial stimulation. So getting children, or let alone adults, to back off of seeing that as their main stimulation is very, very difficult. So be prepared. Those 10 to 12 times may be emotional for both the parent and the child, and to just understand that it's just a passive introduction. It's not something that anybody's got to be made to feel guilty about if they don't eat it. It's just, it has to be just the norm, the environmental norm, to eat a majority of produce on your plate, to try to reduce the amount of added fat, added sugar, added salt, and to really read the ingredient listings and understand you do not really want to see added fat, or added salt any higher than the fourth ingredient. There's certain real basics, and it's hard. It can be very hard.
It is. And I know it's a learning curve. Go ahead, Dr. Thomas.
That's a very good point Susanna brought up, because the recommendation is, even as infants, do not force feed your child. If the baby turns his head away, it means he's full. Do not try to finish that bottle of formula or milk, or try to force feed him with whatever is on his plate. The child knows when his or her stomach is full. And so that force feeding is something that you need to start right from the time that the child is a baby, and because force feeding can cause a lot of eating problems in the future.
Oh, absolutely. And I would love to add on to that, Dr. Thomas. So I've had conversations with people who, if they happen to be someone that grew up in an impoverished environment where, hunger was a real thing in their household,
right?
Where they didn't have a meal that was promised to them every single day. When they grew up to become parents, like I've heard of people saying that I didn't have it when I was growing up, so I want to make sure my children never go hungry. And so as a result, they've expanded the amount of food on the plate just to make sure that their child never had that experience. And I think that is so real. Just honoring the fact that if your child stopped eating, it's not because they're dismissing the food. And I understand that some people are like, well, my food's gonna go to waste. But really just honoring that the child knows that they're full.
Right.
And Susanna, you made such a really good point about, that passive introduction and not forcing the child within that 10 to 12 time period, because at the end of the day, you can get to the 12th time and the child's probably like, no, I don't want it.
Right. True.
But it shouldn't be discouraging.
And that's okay, because then you might meet them at 30 and they're like, you know what I love now? Right?
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
not, the lucky thing is that if you can buy an enormous amount of produce, truly, and it's getting to it and then putting it to use immediately. And I'm going to say this, even though I know this isn't the part of Fed Up, but meat is very, very expensive. The amount of produce that you can
Did
buy
any of my question come through?
and the long-term health that you can get from this is just, I just would counsel everybody to remember, get that produce, fresh produce.
Yeah, totally. One moment, I just want to pause because I know Kevin is coming back into the conversation via audio. Kevin, did you have another question for us?
Yeah, do you have my audio now?
Yes.
I have your audio.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Good. I told a great story about growing up with an Eastern European grandmother that literally only my husband heard. Okay.
Do tell.
So I was thinking back to Omalara, what you were talking about in terms of people growing up and sort of like the experiences we have growing up. A lot of them are cultural, some of them are different things. I was just joking about how my grandmother would take bacon, fry that bacon in lard, and then cook the eggs in whatever that substance was. And then, she's 92 and she's doing fine. So how do you deal with sort of like your cultural and your heritage when you're trying to work this whole thing out? Because a lot of things just aren't natural to us. Dr. Thomas, I'm sure you come across that in your practice.
Yes, quite a lot. And, I think we've got to be very sensitive to that. And like you just mentioned, when you talk to a family, it's not just the parents who are feeding the child. It's the whole family. It's the grandparents. And grandparents, many cultures feel that a healthy baby should be plump and, heavier. And so, and if the baby doesn't eat, they try to force feed the baby. So being very sensitive to that is extremely important. And it's hard for us to understand culture because there are so many different cultures and so many different types of foods that people eat. So what I use in my practice is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, there is choosemyplate.gov, which is a website on which it tells you, it shows, it's very graphic, so it's very easy to understand. So it shows you a plate, and the plate is divided into 4 quadrants and tells you how much of protein, how much of fat, how much of starch, how much of veggies, how much of fruits that plate is divided into. And that's what I use to show parents who, maybe I don't understand the kind of the kind of meat they eat. And then we show them, and there are different size plates for different ages. So we tell them, for a child of 5 years of age, you need to use this size plate, and just make sure that when you feed him, these are the quantities that he should be having. You don't need to use a bigger plate because that's the plate that everybody else is eating. So small things like that. And then also the American Academy of Pediatrics has come up with a guideline, which is kind of easy to remember, which is called 5210. And basically that means 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, 2 hours or less of screen time, 1 hour of physical activity, and 0 sugar sweetened beverages, or 0 fruit juices and sodas.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's what we try to tell parents from different cultures, so they kind of get the idea of what they should be feeding their child and what kind of activities expected. And it's like I said before, a very, very difficult and challenging condition. So what we say is take small steps at a time. You don't have to accomplish all these things at the same time. So what we would start with is maybe give up sodas or give up juice and try drinking just water. Small steps at a time, and every time they come back, we encourage, we reinforce the positive changes that they've made. And that goes a long way, and it can take weeks. Sometimes it's taken months for some change to take place, but that's key. Persistence is key, and education, and knowledge is power. So educating them is what is so important in helping them help themselves, basically.
It
I
seems like
love
a
that.
key to that too is like the idea of sustainability, right? Because if
Hmm.
you do something too quickly or something, then it becomes very difficult and it becomes easy to give up.
Right.
And being a little bit forgiving on yourself and understanding how a more holistic approach to this can work. I mean, we joked earlier about Eggers, but having ice cream every now and then is not the end of the world when you're able to balance that out with other things and you're making overall better choices than just constantly being in that state of ingesting whatever.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here. We don't have any questions from the audience, so I think just on parting words, if there's any, I'm going to go around the table, and if there's anything else you would like to share about how people can become more involved in their community or in their houses and homes, just like what you think the biggest takeaway anyone listening should really hold on with them. Malara, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So I would say that, you know, this is a lifestyle that you're creating. And I think that health is a journey that you're on. And, by taking these little steps, the goal is to, achieve optimal health. And that comes with time. So, don't put yourself down if, you fall short or, you have a moment where you need to indulge. Strive for the best, but also realize that it's a journey. It's not going to be perfect. Especially, I'm not a parent yet, but, I'm learning from a lot of parents and just kind of studying their style of parenting. And, this is definitely, as Dr. Thomas mentioned, a household approach. But I also feel like outside of the household approach, I do think that, as a community, as a borough, and even as a state, we do have a responsibility of how we could ensure that our children have a healthier life and achieve a healthier life. It's not something that, any parent can do it by themselves, and there are many forces that are, contributing to this obesity pandemic, that's shaping the food conditions, that's shaping the systematic failures. And, I think that, education is definitely key, asking more questions, ask more questions. If something seems very unclear, ask questions. And I think that when you ask more questions, it gives you the opportunity to receive more perspectives, and more information that may be beneficial to you and your family. We are, and I say we, the organization Staten Island Partnership for Community Wellness, we're a public health nonprofit. There's different coalitions that are housed within our organization. Child Wellness Initiative is one of them. It's a combination of different CBO partners, such as Susanna Abadi. She's part of the coalition. She represents Snug Harbor. Dr. Thomas represents as a pediatrician and obesity specialist. So we have a multitude of different partners. We also welcome other community members, parents, people who work within schools, elected officials to be involved. This is a collective effort. So the more people we have involved to address this issue of obesity among children, the better. So that's what I would leave everyone with. Is definitely feel free to get connected with CWI.
And Susanna, if you want to go next.
Well, thank you. I think I would say two things is that everybody try to become more literate in what it means to be a whole food, to be unrefined and unprocessed, because I think it's very hard to go wrong if you're focusing on eating whole foods. Think apple, think carrot, something where you really know what that thing really is and how it came to be. I think that's a really important component that's missing from our standard diets. And the other thing I would encourage people to do is to understand that the majority of our calories come to us from plants. So I encourage you to come to Snug Harbor. I encourage you to get to know about that by coming to our farm. You can come and visit our farm by getting in touch with us. You can participate in our CSA. You can grow your own plants at home and come to our plant sale. You can just come to Snug Harbor and learn about how this, where our food comes from.
Awesome. And Dr. Thomas, final thoughts?
Sure. So I hope everybody watched the documentary Fed Up, but I just wanted to add that obesity is not as simplistic as they made it sound in the documentary. There are many other factors involved, and one of them is genetics, and some people are just more likely to be overweight than others. So my take home message would be this has to be a family effort. So you know, if a whole family is struggling, if they're struggling with it, it should be something that it's done. The parents should be models for their children, and they should try to do everything together rather than just pointing fingers at one individual in the family and saying, oh, you need to eat right, or you need to not do this or do that. So I think it really needs to be a family effort. And then the second thing I would say is not to be too hard on yourself or anybody in the family who is struggling with this, because it is not easy. And there are a lot of resources, like Omalara mentioned, that Staten Islanders have, and they should make use of it through the CWI that we talked about, the Child Wellness Initiative. They have a lot of outreach programs with parks, with gym facilities. And so City Harvest has, mobile markets that you can get free produce that, there's so many things that can help families. So don't hesitate to reach out to one of us, even ask your pediatrician for help, and then maybe they can reach out to the group, and we will be able to help them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I, as someone who has kind of struggled with this issue for a good portion of his life and seen other people in my family struggle with it, thank you for those words, because I really think that it's important to understand that it can be a very difficult journey. And I think all too often the conversation around these sort of things are sort of had at people and not with people. And anything that we can do to start having the conversations with people, I think makes all the difference in the world, instead of being talked at. And that's true with a lot of things in life, obviously. So thank all of you so much for your hard work. Please go over to sipcw.org. That's the website, right? And check out all the resources that are there. There are a lot of resources. I know it can be very difficult right now when we're all at home dealing with this, but now is also a really great time to learn a new habit and sort of, really think about cooking and what we're doing and what we're eating and what we're actually putting in our bodies, and portion controls and things, all those sorts of things that we have far better control over now than we probably would otherwise. So thank you, everyone, ever so much. And we will see you coming up on the 30th of May, where we will be screening a great documentary called Woman on Fire. And we're going to have Brooke Einan, the subject of the Staten Island Center, here for conversation. The film is about the first out trans woman firefighter in New York. So please tune in for that. This is one that we were supposed to do back in March. So thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye, Kevin.
Thank you. Good night. Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much.